people today. What is the biggest slice of the pie? What is the biggest reason Russell Wilson's no longer a Seahawk?
Ooh, that's a good question, Salk, because I'm actually writing about it today.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I know you did a little informal poll. I've told people kind of what you've been up to behind the scenes.
Reached out to probably somewhere between 30 and 40 different folks that both in the media that I trust, whose opinion I trust, a lot of former players, current players, some staff on both sides of the camp. So tried to really do a deep dive, and it did not want to make it one-sided, and just asked all of those involved a pretty simple question and asked for kind of one sentence back, one thought on why you think these two separated. And it was pretty fascinating set of responses. There were some right in the middle that just said, frankly, it was time, that it's a decade of relationship and it just meant to come to an end. There were extremes on both sides that kind of name shouted and pointed fingers, and then there was a fair amount of substance that overall, and I think this probably helped shape my opinion a little bit. I think when we discussed this, Salk, a month ago, my big word was pride. It was pride on both sides. And I still will stand by that, because I think that was the overwhelming response. I'm going to kind of formulate all the data, and I'll put a bunch of quotes in, and there were a few that jumped out to me. But one's pride versus one's philosophy was probably, if you boiled it all down, what it came down to. Seahawks, and Pete in particular, have his philosophy of how they want to do it. And Russ has a sense of pride that he still believes in his mind that he can be the greatest to ever do this. And you're seeing it to our conversation yesterday, that he wants his voice heard at the highest level, wants engagement all around him and what he wants offensively. And ultimately, it was his pride versus philosophy that was the major culprit in the separation.
All right, so choose one. What was ultimately the problem?
I would probably lean 60-40 on more of Russ want what Russ wants.
Okay. So I was kind of throwing out options.
I said 51-49 on the podcast.
Now you're drifting towards 60-40.
Probably 60-40.
So you're saying Russ's ego was essentially the number one of many culprits. Doesn't mean he's the only culprit, but the one of many was Russ's ego.
That his desire to have things done his way, QB-centric way, build around a franchise QB, give to me what Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and what others in my position, and one of the responses, and I thought this was a pretty good one, pointed to Russ's face at the Super Bowl when Tom Brady won, sitting there with Roger Goodell in his suite, pointing to that moment of saying that is when Russell, it just fully clicked that, whether it was age and wisdom and experience, that, you know what, I want what he wants. I want this thing built around me and my skill set and my talent, and I've earned that right with a decade of performance.
Yeah. It's an interesting answer. I was kind of going through this earlier and said I want the answer to be that it was Russell's declining skills, and the team said we're no longer interested. I want that to be the answer. I don't think it is, but I want that to be the number one answer.
You not only want that the answer.
I hope it's the answer.
You will be rooting.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I hope that's the case.
Thursday and Sunday and Monday.
I want the answer to be that Russell's skill set was declining. I think you want my fear?
Yeah.
I'm afraid the answer is that they were so bad at talent evaluation that they couldn't put good people around Russell. And that's why he ended up leaving, because he looked around and was like, I just can't work with this anymore.
I just don't trust them to surround me with the talent.
That's
I've given them ample time.
Yep.
We can look at the drafts. We can certainly make that argument. And
that's my fear.
There were more than a couple, Mike, that pointed to that,
Yep.
certainly.
That's my worry that one is the case. But what I believe, if I have to answer, what I believe is the biggest case, yeah, it's related to Russell's ego, but I think it's also his misevaluation of himself. I think that he thinks he's a player that he's not. I think he believes that he is best, that he needs to be productive, and Pete thinks he needs to be efficient. And I think Russell's better at being efficient than productive.
Yeah, that Russ believes, and we've had this conversation for a long time, and this is why he's accomplished what he's accomplished at the size that he is. He is so headstrong, man. He has such a belief in himself, which is an amazing, powerful tool for young athletes, especially as I'm around them, Mike, in multiple sports. You've been around a little bit in youth sports, and you just see the amount of fear and insecurity that a lot of young people have today, right? Whether it's over specialization, whether it's pressure from parents, whether it is just how fast things come at kids today, that, you've got to be the greatest at 8 years old and you can't develop and play, and all the different factors that come into the role of, of squashing some of that confidence. Russell doesn't have it. He believes that he can be the greatest to ever play this game. I guarantee you, at his core today, if you were to sit down and have lunch with him between workouts today, he would say that I can be the greatest. Much like Tom Brady, is with his 7 Super Bowls, if surrounded by the right people, if allowed to flourish the way that I believe my skill set still can for another decade, he still wholeheartedly believes that and is going to get a much bigger seat at the table of crafting that opinion, of crafting the roster, of crafting the offense in Denver than he was in Seattle.